Okay, welcome again to my monthly Mindful Sex series. I host these as a way to get to meet new people across the country, across the world. Thank you all for being here from wherever you are in the world. In a moment, I'll have you drop in into the chat where you are. I always love knowing who people are and where they're calling in from. So again, I'm Andrea, pleasure coach, sex educator. This other human with glasses on, with the plaid shirt, that's my beloved partner, Christopher, in love and in life and in all things erotic. So when you hear me talk about all the delicious things happening in my sex life, it's either with me or with him. So we are both very lucky to be in this place together. So I work as a coach and an educator, which means I teach classes, I do sessions with individuals and couples, and I also offer online education via Patreon, which is a membership-based platform where you can hang out and listen to all the different videos, all the different master classes, all the different quickie videos that I share. And that is a really affordable way to kind of dip your toe into this work. And these classes, these Mindful Sex monthly classes, are free to everyone, and they are meant to help you, again, dip your toe in to this work, whether you have never talked about conscious sexuality before or never even talked about sex at all before. We are here to guide you along the way. So in today's class, I'm going to do a little bit of intro to me and to Christopher, then we'll drop into just a few minutes of housekeeping. Then I will discuss, lecture for a few minutes, maybe 20, 25 minutes or so. And then I want to open it up to questions for you folks, because oftentimes I have a really long thing to talk about. And today I want to actually keep it a little bit shorter and really make space for some questions from the attendees. So I'm going to drop in a couple of links just so if you need to leave early, you have access to me. Let me find it in the chat. My chat box is missing. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so there are 4 links I am dropping in. The first one is Patreon. The second is Instagram. I'm also on TikTok and Facebook. And as you may know, social media really heavily censors sex educators and people like me. So Patreon and my newsletter is the best place to get all of the juicy information, event updates, and all the uncensored, shame-free pleasure education that your little heart desires. I also, you'll all be added to my newsletter, so you'll get those in the coming days, which is great. So I'll also be sending these links out. So if you miss them in the chat, or if you can't read them, you will also have access to them. So again, Andrea, sex coach, sex educator. My work really blends together the spiritual and the scientific to help you better understand your body, your desires, your sex, your sexuality, and help you explore more of who you are. I like to describe myself as a tantrika, as a sex witch, as a conscious sexuality professional, because all of those terms mean something different to different people. And I want you to take what feels curious to you and what feels most interesting. So my work really combines science-backed research and a little bit more of the esoteric, woo-woo kind of hippie stuff that I love. So I love Tantra. I love talking about energy. I love talking about wellness and food and how all of this intersects with ourselves. And I also read a bunch of books and research by therapists and by people who are really studying relationships and sexuality, so that we have this blend of kind of the hippie and the science. And I also love to see one of my marketing friends here who helped me rewrite my story and come up with that beautiful language. Hi, Savannah. Nice to see you. So the other thing to know about me is I really approach my work as a healing practice, especially with what we're talking about today, which is self-pleasure. This is a healing practice. So much of therapy, which Christopher is a sex therapist, he'll talk about in a second. So much of therapy, mental health care, deeply important work. It often cuts off our sexual wholeness. And a lot of people separate that out from who we are. And likewise, in the wellness world, when we think about meditation and yoga and Reiki and crystals and astrology, a lot of that stuff leaves out sexuality as well. So again, we're kind of coming back to this idea of sex not just as pleasure and not just as like fun, but also as like a deeply healing practice. And I came to this work as my own healing practice. I started questioning, what might there be? Is there more to sex? Like, how can I work through some of these challenges that I have with my body, with my relationships, with my relationship to my trauma, with, exploring more. So this work is also my work, and I invite you into this. And all of the stuff that we're going to do today is a way to bring you back to wholeness. You are not broken, and there may be bits and pieces that need a little bit of attention, a little bit of tenderness, a little bit of awareness. So that's what we'll be working on today. I want you to leave feeling really empowered. I want you to leave feeling better educated around self-pleasure, especially self-pleasure as self-care. And we'll talk about how to take yourself on a pleasure date. We'll talk about why self-pleasure as self-care is so important. And then I'll share a couple of different practices that I love to use and that we've used together to really help deepen our practice. So again, as we get settled, I want to introduce my beloved partner, Christopher. If you'd like to do a quick intro, I would welcome that, my love.
Hey y'all, I'm Christopher Brown. I'm a certified sex therapist. I'm the accidental sex therapist. I've been a psychotherapist, talk therapist for 20 years and worked with people for decade plus without ever having one course in human sexuality. So if your erotic self has historically been split off from the rest of you, welcome to being raised in the West. That is what we do. That is puritanical culture. It's what we call in this work colloquially patriarchy. It affects all of us. It's not a gendered thing. It is an environment in which we were all created. So Andrea and I have one thing in common. And it's not this, I am a straight male kinky man who is polyamorous. And I am a sexual health professional who is on my own erotic journey. The best time for me to have started that erotic journey would have been at 13, 14, 15, when I became sexually active in masturbation, which is what we're going to talk about today, or solo sex practices, anything we can do to destigmatize solo sex. And I didn't start that journey then. My solo sex practice started in a locked bathroom as quietly and as fast as it could. And the seed of that practice yielded so much shame in me that it took me literally decades of my life to unwind. So the best time to have gone on a more healthy solo sex journey for me would have been at 13, 14. The second best time, it was about age 49 at a training that I went to, a Tantra training designed in my heart to expand my solo sex practice. Along the way, I met the great love of my life who is going to teach us today. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. There were some disclosures that I made about the effects of that shame-based masturbation and how it affected me today. And I think it was part of what drew Andrea and I together. So again, the best time for me to have had a sex positive, masturbation and solo sex positive experience would have been 13, 14. The second best time was 49 years old. So again, my only message to you is yes, we all could have started this journey earlier. The second best time is today. So welcome. And Andrea, thank you for bringing this topic to light. I say in sex therapy, all roads lead to shame. Even having a webinar of this topic helps destigmatize masturbation and solo sex. And Brene Brown taught us all that shame dies in the light. And so, Andrea, thank you for bringing this topic to light. I love you very much.
Thank you, my darling. And it's a really nice reminder that wherever you are on this journey, you are welcome here. No matter how you identify, no matter what you've experienced, no matter what type of sex you like or who you like to have sex with, you are welcome here. And no matter what you're working through, there is always space for you on this journey. We are all unfolding in our own time. I like to think of our sexuality really as like a really tight rosebud. And, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to open. And then if you ever really watch flowers and plants, they often have what's called nascent movements where they open a little bit and they close, sometimes with the sun, sometimes with the, other elements. And we are like that as well. We might open a little bit and then we might close back down. We might open a little bit on one side and then another side gets triggered or gets shut down. Or maybe we open a lot and then we keep opening and we keep opening and we keep opening. I have found on this journey of conscious sexuality that there seems to be no limit to the amount of opening that we can experience. I continually unlock new pleasure in my body. We continually unlock kind of new levels of connection and pleasure together. And there is so, so much to explore. I also want to take a moment to, again, reflecting on what Christopher said, like, this is hard shit to talk about. We don't have conversations about sex. We don't have conversations about pleasure. And we certainly don't have conversations about masturbation and self-pleasure. So as long as you're not driving or mowing the lawn or something, with dangerous equipment, I want you just to close your eyes for a moment. We'll just do this for just about 60 seconds. Just close your eyes for a second and just notice how you feel in your body. Showing up to a webinar about self-pleasure. How do you feel showing up for yourself in this way? Maybe for the first time. Maybe you're a total sex pro and this is, your 100th webinar on masturbation. If so, awesome, welcome. But for a lot of us, it's going to be our first time. So give yourself some grace. Say thank you. Thank you, body. Thank you, heart. Thank you, mind. Thank you, genitals, whatever you have, for showing up today and being open to having this conversation. Even if you sit in your Zoom room or in your car or on your phone and just listen, that is still a huge leap forward for so, so many people. So you are welcome to be as chatty in the chat and when we get to Q&A as you'd like. And you are also welcome to stay totally silent and totally listening and just be here and learn and take what you will. As always, please reach out to me. Again, I'll be sending a bunch of emails. You can reply to any of those. You can find me on socials and DM and all of that. Please reach out. I would love to know what comes up for you during this workshop, what feels exciting, what feels scary, what feels awesome, and anything else that might come up for you. So let's dive into the discussion. Again, you can write questions in chat. Christopher will be monitoring it while I'm talking. And then at the end, we can either go back to the chat if there's direct questions, and then you can also do Q&A. If you have a question that you would like to remain anonymous, as in I just read it without your name, just write, anonymous in parentheses and say, I have this question about this. Don't say my name. Great. Totally fine. Totally happy to do that. Again, recording your name, your face, not going to show up. So again, we are going to talk about first self-pleasure as a self-care practice, right? We often think of self-care as like bubble baths and manicures and maybe going for a run. Self-pleasure can absolutely be part of your deep self-care practice. We are going to talk about how to take yourself on a pleasure date and what that might look like as you treat yourself as your one most true, most beautiful lover that you will ever have, and hopefully through your lifetime. And number 3, we're going to talk about different practices for self-connection, a few different ways that you can take home today to really deepen into your pleasure practice. All of them are, beginner level, intro. You can do them regardless of who you are, where you are, and they will deepen and enhance your pleasure practice. So let's talk about self-care. We're doing a better job as a culture, I think, especially here in the US. I know some of you are calling in from outside the US, but we're doing a better job talking about mental health, talking about, the importance of seeing a therapist, the importance of taking medications that work for you. That's awesome. That is an awesome part of the conversation. And tons of people I know, including my beloved, have been saved in many ways by medication, by therapy. So this is in no way meant to disparage the tools that we have. However, again, it is cut off from sexuality. And again, our wellness practices also cut off from sexuality. So if we think about self-care, like the kind of cultural memes around self-care, the kind of cultural conversation around self-care. Again, we're getting better at talking about mental health care, seeing a therapist, talking to your friends, what have you. And we're getting better about talking about self-care, right? It is important to fill your own cup before we give and overgive to others, whether you are a parent, whether you are a caregiver, whether you are just like a busy person who's living and trying to thrive in a capitalist society. That shit is hard. Our lives are generally really challenging. And when we make time for self-care, we know that we are giving back to ourselves that which the patriarchy, capitalism, that which individuals in our lives are taking from us, or that we are choosing to overgive, right? And I see this a lot with women, especially, right? Especially women who are parents, but it's also common in men. They overgive, they overprovide, they don't give back to themselves, they don't give themselves time. So again, this is not necessarily gendered. Self-care is gendered, though. We talk about self-care mostly for women, right? Bubble baths, manicures, go get your hair cut, go on a girls' trip, like all of that stuff. Great. But I'm talking about really deep self-care. I'm not talking about the superficial self-care. That's fine. I need to get my hair cut. I have my nails done. That stuff's fine too. I'm talking about the deep self-care. When do you really nurture and nourish yourself with food, with meditation, with yoga, with going to bed an hour early? When do you allow yourself to sleep in? When do you allow yourself to indulge in your favorite coffee or your favorite dessert or your favorite salad? Really deep self-care starts with listening to what we really want. Most people don't have access to what they really want. And this is why self-pleasure, AKA masturbation, can be a great tool for deep self-care. When we give ourselves time and space to separate out our pleasure from our daily life, we can reap so many benefits. Studies show that self-pleasure can help reduce anxiety, can help you feel more connected to your body, can help you better understand what you like as a sexual person, can help you understand how to pleasure yourself so that you can A, feel really good in your own body and experience your own pleasure, but that also if you're partnered or you want to be partnered, that you can then take that information about your pleasure, about your body to another person. So masturbation is part educational, part deep wellness, and also it's just fucking fun, right? Like, I don't know, most people I feel like probably need a little bit more fun in their life. And in our last class last month, I talked a lot about that the theme was multi-orgasmic journeys, right? So there's lots of different types of orgasms to have, lots of different ways to experience them. If you want to talk about that, you'll get the video for that in the upcoming emails. And that is super interesting, dovetails a lot on what we're talking about today. For many of us, and like Christopher said in his intro, we learn to masturbate silently, secretively, often very quickly. And that can lead to an inhibition of pleasure. It can lead to some of these shame-based feelings of like, oh, I got to do this really quickly before my parent, person, child, lover finds out, or that there's somehow something wrong with it, right? If we continually masturbate in that way, we're going to continually perpetuate that self-shame spiral. And sometimes that is all we have access to, right? We have to make do with what we have. And what if you gave yourself over to time, a half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour? It doesn't have to all be genital touch, right? And we'll talk about this more when we talk about the pleasure date next. Really thinking about like, what are the things that would feel really good? I really need to take a shower. I really need to eat some food. Or like we have been laying down a lot and saying like, oh, I'd really love to play and taking naps because we've just been really sleepy. We've had a lot of stuff going on. So oftentimes our shared pleasure starts with a nap. Maybe your solo pleasure starts with a nap as well. 10, 15 minutes, take a little rest, and then dive into touching your body. The other real reason to explore self-pleasure is that it can genuinely boost your feelings of self-love and self-compassion. So for anyone who struggles with not enoughness or feeling like they're not worthy of pleasure or feeling like they have certain feelings about their body, which again, I think everybody in this society does, men, women, everybody else struggles with some sort of, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like myself today, whatever that looks like. And pleasure is one way to bring yourself back to wholeness, bring yourself back to your body. There was a really fun article a couple of months ago in Rolling Stone where Billie Eilish was interviewed, and she's really young. She's like 22 or 23, I think. And she was talking about how amazing her self-pleasure practice is and how important it is to masturbate constantly, and how one of her favorite tricks to really build up her self-love is to masturbate in front of a mirror. So if you have never looked at your genitals, I invite you to do so. If you have never self-pleasured in front of a mirror, I really invite you to do so. And this can be very confronting. It can bring up a lot of big feelings. So just try it for just a couple of minutes and just see what it brings up, see what it feels like, see what you look like in pleasure, and allow all those beautiful pleasure hormones to literally flood your body so that you fall in love with your body, with your pleasure, and with yourself as a lover. There are so many benefits to self-pleasure, and these are just a few of them. I want you also to remember that your pleasure is your power. Like pleasure is not something, well, let me take a step back. Pleasure is very often dismissed as frivolous or unnecessary. And we could have a whole separate conversation around like the medicalization of our bodies and how it's like, does it work? Yes or no? It's not actually about whether it feels good. And we see this in all sorts of different ways. We are trained to deny ourselves pleasure in every way. And one of the platonic examples I like to give is I used to be a barista. I mean, you can see it, right? Like the little green apron, the little glasses. Like I was like a typical Starbucks barista in the early 2000s. Women used to come in, it was always women. Women used to come in and order a non-fat latte with no sugar, no fat, and then they would get like a plain bagel. This is like the ultimate, like, oh, I can't give myself fat. I can't give myself flavor. I can't give myself pleasure, you know? And it was such an interesting it was just such an interesting noticing. And even as a young 20-year-old, like this really stuck with me. Then there were other people who would order, you know, whatever, the Frappuccino or the mocha, and they're like, yeah, like I'm being super bad today, I'm gonna get whipped cream. Or like I'm being super naughty, I'm gonna get extra, you know, whatever, or like an extra, you know, large size or something. We are so ingrained with this idea that pleasure is bad. And this comes from this puritanical culture, it comes from religion, maybe it comes from your family or your kind of, you know, smaller neighborhood, island, city culture. But like this is ingrained in us. So taking back your pleasure as power is super fucking important. Not only does it help you, again, understand your body and understand what you want, it also lets you feel powerful. I own this. Nobody can take this away from me. I can understand myself and I can show up as more of myself when I am living in my pleasure. We did a fun mind mapping exercise a couple of months ago, and what we realized, we being me and Christopher, what we realized about me was that really like being in my pleasure self, which we have nicknamed my Venus self, right? Because I imagine like Venus coming out of the water on the shell. Um, being in my Venus self, being in my pleasure self, when I am not rigid, when I'm not holding myself back, when I am not overscheduled, infuses my whole life with joy, infuses my whole life with ease. It's more fun, it's more playful. And can I always live from that place? No, like I still have to pay bills. We still have to deal with, you know, troubles at the airport. Like there is still shit that happens because we are humans existing on this planet. But like when I can come back to that pleasure as the landing pad for who I am, when I can come back to that as everything flows easier when I am in my pleasure, then things feel really good. So I want to pause for just a second. I see a bunch of stuff happening in the chat. So Christopher, I'd love to open it up to you. And is there anything that we should chat about? Anything you want to drop in?
I think Poppy had a very brave and beautiful share. I don't know if they want me to read it. I just want to acknowledge them and thank you for being here and just my heart and my love to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Poppy. I look forward to reading it later. So I want to talk about part two, which is taking yourself on a pleasure date. So again, this idea, I love this idea that we are our own best lover, right? Not only does self-pleasure feel good, not only does it help us stand in our power, not only does it help us understand our bodies better, but it is a way to really love on ourselves and treat ourselves the same way that we would treat our new lover who we just like have fallen in love with and totally adore. And maybe that's the person you've been with for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Awesome. You are your own best lover. And I want you to treat yourself as such. I want you to take yourself on a pleasure date, whatever that looks like for you in your budget, in your neighborhood, in your house. There are so many ways to do this, but here's some of the things I want you to think about. I want you to think about setting aside time, like block it on your calendar, however you manage your time. For me, it's a Google Calendar. I kind of live and die by my calendar, and I would block it off and say, like, tonight is a quiet night. Tonight is a pleasure date, right? And maybe it's nighttime for you. For me, I'm often more pleasure focused in the afternoon. By nighttime, I tend to get really sleepy. So maybe for you, it's like a noon to 5. Maybe it's early morning. What do you need to feel good in your body? Do you need some food? Do you need a certain type of food? Do you need some coffee? Do you need a glass of wine? Alcohol is tricky for a lot of people. Sometimes a little bit of alcohol can be a disinhibitor, which can help us feel more open. A little too much, and we might shut down. Like I find that I really shut down sexually. I can't access my pleasure. I feel like I can't feel my body as much when I drink. So we had a rule for a long time that if we go out on like a date night together and have alcohol, we actually don't fool around. And we've loosened that a little bit, and sometimes it can be fun. And maybe it's not the drug of choice for you. Maybe cannabis is your choice. Maybe it's a little bit of mushrooms. Maybe it's just like a really nice mug of hot chocolate that feels really warm and soothing and delicious. What are the nourishing things that you might like to feel good? Whether that's like treating your inner child with some hot chocolate or treating your, tired grown up with a glass of wine or a little puff or a little edible or something, like how can you set yourself up for relaxation? So I want you to set aside time. I want you to think about what your whole body needs. And then I want you to engage with your body from head to toe. Do you need to wash your hair? Do you need to do your hair, style it? If you have a lot of hair and if you want to like brush it or curl it or get a blowout or whatever it is, what makes you feel beautiful? What makes you feel sexy? Maybe you shave your face. Maybe you let it be scruffy. Maybe you groom your body with a certain shaving or not shaving. Or maybe I always put on like different essential oils because that makes me feel super tuned into my body. Sandalwood is our sexy scent of choice that I always anoint him with sandalwood if we're playing together. And I will often do that for myself as well, so that I put a little oil on so that like when I am kind of in this pleasure space, I can like also enjoy scent. So what scents might you enjoy? And then think about the visuals. How might you set up your house or your bedroom as if you had a lover coming over for a first date or the first time maybe you're going to get naked together? Would you turn down the lights? Would you light some candles? Would you, change up wash your sheets, change the bedding? How would you set up a visually stimulating space so that you feel invited in? This is especially important if for those of us that work from home, how do we separate out our like to do and like work focused self from our pleasure self, right? It's really important for me to like never have computers in the bed. I try not to work from bed. I try not to bring my computer to bed. Bed is for lovemaking, bed is for pleasure, and sometimes for scrolling on Instagram, but we usually do it together as fun. But mostly for pleasure, right? I try not to work in bed. We don't eat in bed. Like we keep it really separate. So what are the things that you would need to see, feel, taste, and smell in order to feel like you were really taking yourself on a date. And again, how much time can you set aside for this? Is it an hour? Is it a half an hour? Is it like once a month on a Saturday when you know you don't have to do anything, or when your parents have your kids, or whatever it is, you need to kind of coordinate that time? How can you think about taking yourself on a pleasure date? And even if it's a short event, maybe you give yourself 15 minutes or a half an hour. What can you do to change your space and change your mindset around dropping into pleasure? So if you have any ideas and if you feel like sharing them, I would love to hear them. Again, like mine is, I like to take a bath. Sometimes I start my self-pleasure in the bathtub. Most toys are waterproof now, which is pretty fun. I always use scents. I've been a novice herbalist for a long time. I love using essential oils and perfumes to really get me into my body. Sometimes I wear a specific thing, right? That's another thing. Like I have these new jumpsuits that like feel super good, that look super good. I feel super sexy in them, and they're just like so nice to wear around the house because it just like feels good on my body. Maybe for you it's totally naked, maybe it's a special pair of undies or a special top, or your favorite coziest, college t-shirt. Like it doesn't matter. Whatever makes you feel good is what I want you to enjoy. Lo-fi beats, yes, that's also music. I actually have, hold on, I made a playlist and I'm going to share it. And again, I will drop this into the email as well, but I finally joined Spotify. So here is a playlist that I made that's called Drop In, and it's all about like really just like dropping into pleasure, dropping into your body, dropping into connection. Yeah, music is super important to us too. I almost always have music on in the house. And when we enjoy MDMA journeys or psychedelic journeys or just like pleasure journeys, we always have music on in the background. And it really helps like kind of frame up the space, right? So the last thing I want to talk about is some different ways of self-connection. So one of the most important things that I want you to take away from today is, again, remembering your pleasure is your power, and remembering at any moment that you can deepen into that, whatever the sensation is, whatever the pleasure is, whatever the activity is that you're doing, you can deepen into that by using your breath. When we go back to what Christopher was saying about how most of us learned to masturbate in a way that was quiet, that was secretive, that was fast, most of us don't get a chance to really breathe and open into our pleasure. So if you are accustomed to going right for the genitals, to getting off as fast as you can, again, like sometimes those are great. That's exactly what you need to move through the day, fall asleep, whatever. But what if you gave yourself a few more minutes, and as you start to get super aroused, just take a couple of deep breaths. You can put your hand on your heart and put your hand on your belly right now and just what does it feel like when we really breathe into our heart space? What does it feel like when we really breathe into our belly? And you can imagine using that breath to move the turn on, move the arousal through your body. So if you imagine that you are pleasuring yourself, whatever your genitals look like, however you like to touch yourself, when you start to feel a little turned on, take your hands off or remove your toy or whatever implement you might be using, and just take a couple of deep breaths. Imagine that you can take your pleasure from your genitals and move it up into your body. This takes a little bit of practice. It may take a little bit of fake it till you make it, right? Our energy is there. And if you haven't experienced it before, you may not know kind of quite what it feels like or looks like. That's okay. Just give yourself a chance to practice it. And imagine that you're moving this energy through your whole body. Not only does this help slow down our pleasure practice, right? So that we can feel more arousal, spend more time in pleasure. It also helps bring the rest of your body online. Again, the way most of us have learned to masturbate, and often the way we often have sex, is to just, touch our body in a certain way, build up some friction, and then like, boom, maybe probably have an orgasm, and then we're done. I invite you to really stretch that out time-wise, physically, breath, like really adding in these different ways to really expand your pleasure. When we start to expand it, we get to learn more about our body, right? Oh, what if I touch here, but then also touch my nipples at the same time? What if I touch here, but also like put my hand in my hair? What does that feel like? I really like sucking on things when I'm in pleasure, whether that's other parts of my human or other parts of me, whether it's a toy, because when we connect our throat with our pelvis, it can open us up literally from the inside out. These are all things to experiment with. We bring the breath online, we slow way down, and we be curious about what else might feel good. And this is the second part of it, is really like, where else can you engage your body? Again, old style masturbation, old style sexual intercourse, we just like go for the bits and we focus only on that and we go really quickly. What if you touched your ears, your neck, your breasts or your chest, maybe your belly or your hips? What if you touch your ass? Maybe just the outside, maybe just the juicy bits. Maybe you start to explore some anal pleasure with some external touch. Maybe you just touch your arms and your hands in a new way and allow yourself to feel your own skin, allow yourself to feel your own goosebumps, your own, any hair that you might have on your body. All of the cells in our body are wired for pleasure. So as you start to think about expanding your pleasure practice, I invite you to change it up, try new parts of the body, and see what might work for you. The other way to do this is to bring in sensation tools. And by tools, I mean like literally anything that might feel good against your skin. So some really handy ones that most people have around the house are using some forks. Maybe use a fork just on your skin, just to feel what it feels like to feel a little scratchy. Maybe you have feathers or like a fuzzy blanket that you can rub your face on or rub your neck or your body on. What does it feel like to have like silky fabric, or like we have some fuzzy blankets? Like, what does that feel like on my belly or my chest? I also invite you to try a different position. If you always masturbate laying on your back, try it on your belly. If you always masturbate on your belly, which is very common, try it on your back. Try it in the bathtub. Try it in the shower. Try it in a different room. We have a day bed. You can kind of see it behind me in the screen here. When we first saw this place, I was like, oh my God, like that's where we're going to have sex all the time. And it is, because it's different from the bedrooms and it's open, it's surrounded by light, and I love it. It's so beautiful. It's so sexy. So trying out these different ways, in trying out these different places in the house, trying out different places on your body to bring in whole body sensation is so powerful to helping you discover more of what your particular buried treasure is. What else? The final thing I want to add in is, as you start to explore your self-pleasure, as you start to bring in more of your body, as you start to bring in more sensation, when you have your whole senses on board, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, I want you to practice edging, which is bringing yourself up to high arousal and then backing off. Bringing yourself back up and then backing off. And again, right? And you can do this in lots of different ways. You can do this with, analog touch, where you're just using your hands or your fingers, no matter what type of body part you have, whether you're stroking something or touching something, you can do it a little bit and then back off. And backing off could look a couple of different ways. It could be, yeah, edging is my jam. Awesome. Fabulous. Edging helps us not only make our orgasm bigger and often last longer. For people with penises, it can often help you explore energetic orgasms, non-ejaculatory orgasms. For people with vulvas, it can help you expand the types of orgasms you have outside of just like clitoral stimulation. There's dozens of different types of orgasms to be explored. All of these are possible, and we often don't get to them if we just go the fast, quick, efficient route. So when we start to expand in these new ways, adding new touch, adding sensation, adding senses, then we can, and adding the edging, then we can really start to open up and like see what is possible in our bodies. So if you're edging with a toy, you can, start on a low speed or a low, if you're using an insertable, you can put it in a little bit and then like take it back out and then like go back to analog and then like go back to the toy and then go back to analog. So lots of different ways to explore edging depending on how you're masturbating and depending on what implements you might be using. There's different ways to explore that, but it's a super powerful tool to get a little bit deeper and help unwind some of those old habits or patterns we might have when it comes to self-pleasure. And just kind of like, I had somebody say one time, like, I just got to get in and bang one out before going to bed. Like, great. If that's what you need to do, like get in, bang one out, go to bed for sure. But here's an alternative way to explore your pleasure. So with that, I want to close the kind of lecture portion of it, and I will open it up to questions. Christopher, you raised your hand. What you got, my love?
I did. I'd often, so the intersection or maybe the complementary nature of sex therapy and sex coaching comes here. So often in sex therapy, it's like any other kind of therapy, right? Think about physical therapy. We usually go when something's hurting. And then the goal is to stop hurting. And then once I stop hurting, I'm done with the physical therapy. That in sex therapy, often I have a wound that I'm trying to heal or I have a dilemma I'm trying to resolve, but it doesn't mean that I really expand into pleasure, right? That's where Andrea takes us, right? My job is to kind of get us to baseline, things aren't hurting me emotionally, physically. And then she takes it to a whole nother level if we can find our versions of her practices. One of the things that came to my mind from a therapeutic stance, though, as she's talking, is what are the obstacles to your solo sex practice? She gave us great advice about how to calendar, how to block it off, how to engage our senses. But I was on a podcast a few years ago, and I remember the host saying we were talking about self-pleasure from a therapeutic stance, and she said she was in a straight presenting relationship, and she said, whenever I start my masturbation practice, my partner barges in. And so I do want to hold space for those of you who are in circumstances living with family or partners, and you're taking on this new approach to self-pleasure. There may be some negotiation that has to go on with people in the house. You may have to deal with, where are my kids and what are my obligations and who's in and out and how do I create space and boundaries with the other people in my system around this new practice. So I just wanted to offer that as an adjunct to what Andrea is describing, because you may have to create some safety and some boundaries with the people in your home or in your environment to really protect and fiercely protect that time for yourself. So I just wanted to offer that piece. Andrea, thank you.
Fabulous. So I'd love to open it up to Q&A. I am going to stop the recording now. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. Please watch your inbox.